Does look like we have most of the people that I was expecting here. So just to give those of you who are attending with respect to the two applications that are before council tonight, there is a temporary use permit being considered for 1456 Bay Avenue, as well as one for 1650 McLean Street. You will be provided opportunity to speak to council with respect to the application in favor or in opposition of the application, if you wish, when we get to that item on the agenda. We just ask before that you please mute your microphones so that we don't get any background noise from your households or your offices. And when it comes time to address council, Mayor Payson will call on those of you who may wish to speak, and you can raise your hand either visually, or there is a way to do it electronically as well. I'm not quite sure of that process, but just alert us to the fact that you want to speak, and we'll call on you then, and then you can unmute your microphone. Are there any questions before Mayor Payson calls the meeting to order?
All right, it's 6:02. It is Monday, September 27, 2021, and this is the regular council meeting, and I am calling the meeting to order. The first, I should say that this meeting is being recorded. And the first item on the agenda is adoption of the minutes. There's 3 sets of minutes: the Governance and Operations Committee meeting of August 16th, 2021, the public hearing of August 16th, 2021, and the regular council meeting of August 16th, 2021. The recommendation before us is that the minutes of the GOC public hearing and regular council meeting all held August 16th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Do I have someone to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Gattafoni Robinson and Councillor Butler. Any errors or omissions that you see on any of the minutes? No? Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Public question period. Ms. McIsaac, I just want to clarify that I'm assuming that most of the public here is for one of the temporary use permits. So is that where we are going to hear the public under each category of temporary use permit?
Sorry, excuse me, Mayor Payson, what I would suggest is that you have staff introduce each item. We'll then hear from the applicant following, and after that, we can hear from any of those who have chosen to participate here in the meeting for each of the applications separately.
So we don't have anything submitted for public question period as a standalone item then?
That's correct.
Great. Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to number 3. Number 3, communications. The 3.1 item is 1456 Bay Avenue, temporary use permit application. And Ms. McIsaac, I will turn the floor over to you for an explanation on this.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Excuse me for a minute, Michelle. I think I have to leave the room because I'm on this board.
Yes, you will.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to excuse yourself, is there a way that we can contact you to alert you to return to the meeting?
Well, no, maybe I can just peek around the corner and no?
No, you do need to, you'll need to turn the volume off of your computer. And so what we'll do is we'll just give you a phone call on your home line.
Okay, so do you want me to put it on mute?
Yeah, turn your speakers off and remove yourself from the room, and we will give you a phone call. So the city is in receipt of an application from Career Development Services with respect to the operations of the homeless shelter that operates from within the premises at 1456 Bay Avenue. Career Development Services, in cooperation with BC Housing, is seeking to expand the number of shelter beds that are made available there. The property at 1456 Bay Avenue is owned by the Trail Association for Community Living, and Career Development Services is a branch of that association, and it currently houses the Community Inclusion Center. In years prior, the extreme weather shelter was permitted to operate from within the premises as an accessory use. And the 8-bed shelter would typically operate nightly from November through March of each year. But with COVID and the impacts of COVID, as well as the opioid crisis that has hit our community, our province, and the country, the shelter's operations in the last year have been extended to include year-round services, so both day and night. And with an increased need and demand that we're still experiencing, CDS is reaching out to the city for a temporary commercial use permit in order to expand from 8 shelter beds to 18. So the property is zoned commercial, the general commercial zone C1, which does allow a wide range of business and residential uses, and the Community Inclusion Center is a permitted use there. But what the City of Trails zoning bylaw is lacking is a definition of shelter services generally, and we don't have any zone presently that would allow a full-time shelter. So if we do advance to a point where whether it be CDS or BC Housing looking to secure lands for a full-time permanent shelter, it would be recommended that we amend the zoning bylaw to create the necessary definitions and spot zone. But because what the outreach to us is presently, and it's understood that this use of shelter space at 1456 Bay Avenue is intended to be temporary in nature, while a more suitable shelter location can be secured, what council can do rather than rezoning the property is issue a temporary use permit. And the permit can be issued for a term of up to 3 years. And once issued, an applicant can apply for a renewal one time only. So there is limits to the time period for temporary use permits. As well, council can attach conditions to a temporary use permit if it is to be authorized, depending on what the needs may be. So when we look at the use of 1456 Bay Avenue for the shelter services from a land use planning perspective, we can see that there are some difficulties experienced by the neighboring properties. So we have received concerns in the year past about noise disturbances, increase in drug use, very disruptive behaviors in the rear lane where the shelter is accessed from. And council will want to take those matters into account, as well as any public input that you receive in response to the notification letter that went out to all property owners within 50 meters, providing opportunity to express any concerns through to council with respect to the temporary use permit. Recognizing that there is a very significant need and no alternate location presently identified, the expansion of beds at the current shelter may serve to remove some of those clients who are lingering in the back, waiting for food services or waiting for hygiene services, may provide opportunity for them to be sheltered within the confines of the premises, and could reduce some of those conflicts that we are seeing. But again, it's very important that council do take those concerns into account. With your council agenda packages, some letters of support were provided. They had been provided through to the city in advance of our agenda publication. And then we did receive some follow-up communications over the weekend and as late as today that have been sent to all of council as well as to the applicant via email. So we won't go over those in any detail, but I did just want to raise the fact that there were letters of support provided by the Lower Columbia Affordable Housing Society, Interior Health, the Lower Columbia Community Development Team Society, Anchors, Selkirk Security Services, the Trail Community Action Team, Communities in Faith Pastoral Charge, and the Trail Elderly Citizens Housing Society. And on the opposing side, we received communications from Grant Thornton, who own property at 1440 Bay Avenue, the Colander Restaurant, 1475 Bay Avenue, McEwen Law Company at 1432 Bay Avenue, as well as Gordon and Marion Fisher of 1500 Cedar Avenue. So I do hope that all of council have had opportunity to review all of the communications, both positive and negative, and just to speak a bit to those letters of opposition that were received, and I will speak in generalities. Many of the concerns coming from those neighboring businesses relate to the disruption within their own business premises. So whether it be at Grant Thornton or at McEwen and Company, with the disruptive behaviors in the rear lane, it's made it necessary for them not to utilize some of their rear office spaces because of either raised voices or emergency service responders, and they're just not able to deal efficiently with their clients and staff in those spaces. Concerns have also been raised about the personal safety, both of employees as well as some of the people lingering in the rear lane. And because deliveries are primarily, I'll say, delivered to the rear of these business locations via the alley, there is concern that some of the vulnerable population could be at risk if either a large delivery truck or other didn't perhaps see them, or if they weren't noticeable to them because they're up in a semi. Other than that, one of the common concerns that we do hear about is around the hygiene and waste materials or discarded materials in the alley. And so that is a concern that we have been aware of over time. The city has made efforts through our bylaw enforcement team, working with the RCMP and CDS to do more thorough cleaning of the laneway on a twice a week basis, not bi-weekly. But over the winter months, it will be more difficult for some of that alley flushing and sweeping to occur. So when we think of issuance of this permit, some of the conditions that council may wish to apply might require the shelter operator to perhaps do some added cleanup, waste material disposal, or because of the disruptive behaviors that the businesses are bringing forward, what you may want to consider is requiring some added security to be provided there. And that is commented in one of the responses that was received, that it may be a thought for council to require some added security there, which could be supported through BC Housing's funding, so that there is an added level of safety and security felt in that rear lane. At this time, it would be appropriate for us to hear from Sheila Adcock, representing Career Development Services as the applicant. And I do have a brief presentation. Sheila, you can let me know when you wish me to advance the slides. So I will share my screen for the benefit of everyone. And Sheila, I'll just hand the floor over to you. Just one moment. So I'm unable to see what I am sharing on the screen. Are you seeing the blue slide, 1458 Bay Avenue?
Yes.
Temporary use permit?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor and Council for giving me the opportunity to present tonight. to share information and answer any questions about the temporary expansion permit that we've submitted. And tonight we just have a short few slides to share, and then I'll answer questions and give a little bit more of an overview if that's required. And you can go to the next one, Michelle. So I just wanted to go over, and I know that this is not news to the mayor and council, but that there is a critical need in the community of Trail for a shelter, a year-round shelter within the community. And the existing shelter doesn't have the capacity to support the need that we're seeing. We're having 16 to 20 individuals present every night right now. It's really busy because of the cold weather coming and the rain, and people trying to seek refuge and warmth at nighttime. So we currently have 8 beds. We've been able to put up some dividers and put mattresses on the floor, but it's not meeting the need, and it goes against our value system to be turning people away in the cold and not allowing them in. So we're looking to expand the shelter and utilize the basement space there in order to put 10 more beds in so that we can accommodate the need in the community. We are looking at a temporary permit. We've been very vocal and active on the local community teams where we're identifying other options, looking at supportive housing, trying to find other options, looking at real estate, looking in the community for different building spaces. But to date, we haven't been able to secure anything bigger that might meet the needs. And with the oncoming winter months and stuff, we need to move people inside. We understand that with the weather becoming worse, we're ending up in some pretty dire situation with individuals living on the streets. Not only are they dealing with the COVID, as well as fears around that, as well as getting cold and needing to move inside. So currently we are building storage units inside. So if you want to go to the next slide, Michelle. So currently what we provide at the shelter are at nighttime are beds. During the day, people come and drop in, and they can have a shower. They meet with community resources, whether it's Interior Health or Anchors or the outreach. We have 3 outreach workers now working with the shelter, 2 that were funded through UBCM, as well as the 1 outreach through Getting to Home that are working diligently with Interior Health, Anchors, the local churches, trying to come together to provide wraparound services to assist individuals to get their needs met, and in not only their basic human needs like sleep and warmth and food, but in getting supports to make different choices in their life to to be able to get out of this homeless situation they're in. Right now, we're building some storage lockers so that we can bring individuals into the shelter that might be hesitant to do so because they don't want to leave their personal belongings that just in the community to be stolen. So we do have some storage lockers being built, and at the end of the day, regardless, we'll have a place to have people store their stuff to keep it safe. We are staffed 24/7 right now. That was in response to the COVID pandemic, happened in March, and we've been open 24 hours a day, 2 staff at all times on site inside the shelter. And now we've got 2 staff that are in the back alleys, in the parks, in the community, assisting individuals to be able to get the services that they need, as well as we've been meeting with a lot of the downtown merchants around, painting buildings and doing stuff like that, talking to them about their fears, and moving people along if they're in any kind of way impeding on the downtown merchants conducting their businesses. We follow all the COVID-19 protocols pretty closely. We and work with Interior Health and the medical health officer and the infectious team control, and have the last 2 meetings I've been at, there has been no new cases of COVID with any of the shelter guests. We haven't had any shelter staff identified as having COVID, and the cleaning procedures and protocols there are pretty rigid. So we anticipate being able to keep staff and individuals safe in the shelter throughout the winter months and moving forward through the pandemic. Okay, next one, Michelle. So when we're looking at the shelter space, we definitely are taking safety and security of the individuals, of the local merchants specifically close to the back alley there, in response to some concerns from local businesses and the shelter guests, not only the local merchants, but the shelter guests being at high risk in the back alley, people driving by, threatening and stuff like that. We did install security cameras that take up both sides, the whole alley. So before it was just, they were just outside our back door, but we had them modified so that they take up the whole alley, and the RCMP are free to call on those videos at any time if there's any concerns about any of the behaviors and or issues going on in the back alley. So, and we review them on a regular basis if there's any complaints made and respond to them as quickly as we can. And we, so we have those in place. We also have them on the front street as well as in the back alley. I have given, in the last week or so, we have been handing out information to all the neighbors in the downtown core, asking them to contact myself and telling them who to call, when to call, just so that they have a place to connect with someone, a name, a face to connect with if there's any issues. And, you know, we've agreed in a number of cases to come out, do cleanup. We clean up. We've talked to one landlord about if they wanted to have a gate put up. When we went and spoke to them, they said that they hadn't had any more issues except for the one, and so they were fine. But I have left our card and information to contact us so that we can be of assistance to any of the neighbors while we're providing necessary supports to the vulnerable people showing up at our shelter. Okay.
Can we ask a question, or do you want us to wait?
Sheila, did you have one more slide?
Just this one here. It's
okay,
just
and then Councillor Santori, I'll let you ask a question.
After this slide, okay.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Sheila.
This just talks about CDS and how long we've been providing supports in trail, and we do have a long-standing CDS as an agency governed by TACL, which has actually been around since 1951. Their 70th anniversary this year, and we myself have been providing support services since 1989. We've operated the shelter since 2012. We understand it isn't the optimal space, but at this point, it seems to be our best option in a bad situation. So we're asking for the mayor and council to look at moving forward with us and allowing the permit to move forward and expand the shelter in the short term till we can find the best case scenario. So we do operate these many different programs, and we would like to, I guess, open it up to any other questions at this point.
Okay, Councillor Santori, I'm going to just ask you to ask your question, then I'm going to just check back with staff on process.
Okay. First of all, let me begin by saying I totally get that, Sheila, the challenges that you have, and I totally accept the fact that you're doing the best that you possibly can with the resources that you're given. Now, having said that, I think the people need some real answers. because the focus, of course, is on the homeless and they're at risk. Well, it's getting to the point in our downtown core where businesses and individuals are at risk. And they're wondering what's happening to protect them. So I get it. You have 24-hour surveillance on those cameras. Who are those intended for? Are those intended to monitor the actions of the homeless or people that are threatening the homeless, as you stated earlier? If it is the homeless and people with drug addictions, if they're caught on camera, and people are asking these questions, what happens when they are caught defecating in our alleys and smearing it on walls? How are they being held accountable for using illicit drugs in a public space, disposal of needles in public spaces? And the list goes on and on and on, because this is putting our citizens at risk. It's definitely put our image at significant risk. Just as recently as 2 weekends ago on the golf course at Christina Lake, 3 individuals have told me what they think trail has turned into. And it's disheartening for all of us. The other question that I have is the use of temporary. I'm going to be very frank here. I personally am extremely disappointed with BC Housing. It's been almost a year and we have moved nowhere closer to finding any supportive housing initiatives taking place. And based on what we have been told recently, at best, we are looking at 2 years. That's at best 2 years. And that's directly from BC Housing. How much more can our local businesses endure day in and day out? We increase the beds, we are going to increase the problems in the alley, we are going to attract more homeless people. And again, I'm not disputing the fact that these people have issues, but in dealing with these people's issues, we are losing sight of our local residents and them being at risk. So I guess the two question is, what are the consequences for these people that we're helping when they don't follow the rules that are set out by Career Development Services? And 2, is it safe to assume that temporary means a minimum of 2 years? You said until such time as we find an adequate location to serve that. Based on what we were told today, it's not going to happen in the short term. So it would be safe to say that we're defining temporary as 2 years or more.
Councillor Santori, I think I'm going to turn the temporary question over to Ms. McIsaac. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. So the term of the permit is at the pleasure of council. So it can be for up to 3 years, which would be what was requested by Career Development Services. As indicated in the reporting that I've prepared for you, a staff suggestion, if council is agreeable and recognizing that there is a very immediate and emergent need, that you would issue the permit, perhaps with conditions, but for a 1-year term. So that would allow the operations through this winter season, and then into summer. Planning would have to be made for a renewal of the permit if there wasn't at that time action being taken to relocate. We did hear from BC Housing that that process is going to be longer, and in other discussions with BC Housing in particular to this permit, it was suggested that an 18-month term, if council wasn't agreeable with the 3-year term, an 18-month term would see the operations through the next 2 winter seasons, and afford the opportunity of time needed for identifying that location. So staff's recommendation is a 1-year term. BC Housing is asking for 18 months, but the decision rests with council as to the term that you would feel would be appropriate.
And I thanks for that response, Michelle. And I understand that. I read what the recommendation is, but that's great in theory. In reality, if BC Housing has not acted on this, if we were to prove this today, I can't see why we would disapprove it if they come back 18 months later and want an extension, which is allowable. We are allowed to do that. So if we go 18 months, we can renew it one more time, right?
Correct.
So that would be up to 3 years. So I just want to be honest with, and the public should be aware that potentially this could happen for a minimum of 3 years, and probably more realistically, 3. I mean, we were told today we couldn't even consider construction starting for 2. So I think the public should know if we do this, there's the potential that it could be 3 years, and it could be even more.
Do you want me to answer the other questions that you asked?
Sure, Sheila, go ahead. Thank you.
So one of the questions that you noted was, were the cameras put in for the individuals? The cameras are put in for the individuals. We're just outside our back door so that we could look at what was happening just behind in our back alley, which is where most people congregate. The people waiting out there waiting to come in to eat or to have a shower, because with COVID, we're limited space. When the beds aren't being used, we only have a very small space. So they have to wait outside for their turn. So we just had the cameras out there. When in meeting with city and meeting with the local merchants and having them talk about the backs of their businesses and what was happening, we did go and secure more video coverage so that if there was anything that happened in the near alleyway, we would have it readily available. Now, having said that, we only view it if there's a complaint in the alley. If there's a complaint from a local merchant, we can pull it up, but we don't sit and watch it minute by minute during the day to see if anybody was smoking anything or doing any drugs back there. That's just not even the RCMP are not going to pull people aside and charge them if they're found doing drugs in the alley. We monitor for any kind of disturbance to the neighbors or any kind of physical assaults amongst each other or from community, and there have been a few of those. What we have now, we've stepped up because the shelter staff working inside the shelter don't have capacity to come outside. They're busy with tenants inside. So we have stepped up the outreach around the shelter, around the parks, around the libraries where people are typically hanging out. And we do a sweep at least twice a day around by the Bank of Montreal, the library and the parks, as well as behind the shelter, and do a cleanup. We encourage and we'll shut the shelter down and make sure if the back alley is bad, what we do is we'll shut the shelter down and everybody in the shelter comes out to help. The individuals that are congregating out back are given buckets and brooms, and they do help with the cleanup. We do have a large sharps container back there, and we find very few needles in the back alley. I did give all any nearby neighbors as well as the community our phone number to call if they find a needle anywhere. We'll gladly come pick it up. We have noted that there's a decrease in people setting up tents and tarps and stuff in the back alley as we've been allowing more people in with their stuff to get warm and that kind of thing. So, and the other comment or question was around, will the expansion of the shelter bring more people in? No, these are individuals that are already here. All of the individuals that are at the shelter are between Trail and Castlegar residents. We have had 3 that came from out of town recently, and we have assisted them with getting bus tickets to go back to their home community where they have the local supports, and they ended up here for a lot of different reasons. But the ones that we have at the shelter typically are from this area. It's my understanding that the Castlegar shelter will be opening nightly November 1st, so that might take a little bit of the heat off. But still, of the individuals that are seeking beds at night and supports during the day, I would say 85% of them have family here and were born and raised here. So they're not people from those other places. These are people from this community. And like I said, they have families and that are in the area that I'm sure their heart bleeds every time they see the condition that they're in. But we're just trying to do one part of it and recognizing it's not the best case scenario, but at this time it's the only way that we know to help individuals get them off the street. So I don't see that it will increase any in the alley because those individuals are still there. We'll just give them better options to hanging out in the alley by providing a space that they can all come in and not have to wait their turn.
Thanks for your response. And then my final question is, in the past, funding was till March of each year. And because of COVID now, it's been extended day and night, 365 days a year. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that funding comes from BC Housing, right?
yes.
So let's assume for a minute that things go really good and COVID is over by March of this year. Does BC Housing anticipate to pull funding to provide housing only up until March again? Or is this annual now that the problem is evident? Will the funding continue for these centers year-round regardless of whether or not COVID is here or not? And if not, where are these people going to go after COVID is over?
We don't anticipate that the funding will be pulled at this point due to the emergent need and in the amount, as well as the opioid crisis. But our funding is based on numbers as well. So if through people getting housing, other options are coming available and the count is low, what will happen is the funding will decrease based on the need. So, but right now, we're not anticipating going back to nightly anytime in the near future. So we're assuming 24/7 at this point.
Thank you. Ms. McIsaac, so just as far as process goes, because if people are here to make a statement, I'd like to give them the opportunity to do so. So how should I advance this, please?
We have two representatives of BC Housing online who may wish to add to, as a co-applicant may wish to add. Also, we have Jennifer Driuti who is taking part, who as an adjacent property owner who may wish to comment as well.
Okay, so BC Housing, does anyone from BC Housing wish to speak? Nanette, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. And I didn't have a formal presentation prepared. I was here in general to support Career Development Services application in this matter, and perhaps what I'll do is just comment on what Sheila has said and just reiterate some of those commitments where BC Housing is concerned, and certainly integration into community where you are interfacing with businesses is a priority area for us. And that's why, Sheila's talking about some of her staff going out 2 times a day to do garbage cleanup, to be available to do sharps disposal if someone finds a needle that they are uncomfortable with handling, to ensure that we have enough space so that people can come in. Because that's what Sheila talks about, is that there's a lineup because there's COVID protocols and there's just not enough space to support that many people in one small area. So opening up the basement, I think, will mitigate some of the issues that they're seeing in the alley. Of course, we support in many shelters in the interior where we have either extra staff being out and about trying to mitigate that interface with businesses and with community. And certainly in some cases, we do have security. It is on a community by community basis because oftentimes the security just isn't available. So there's that. In terms of our funding commitments, it is a minimum staffing complement of 24/7. We don't, for us in the interior, we don't prefer sort of a 12-hour model, which has traditionally been the case for Career Development Services and previous shelter operations prior to COVID. We do really support a 24-hour operating model because if you set people off in the morning, what are they going to do all day until the evening when there's intake? What they do is they interface with businesses, probably in a negative way, or community members. We want to provide that safety and supportive environment for people to come in and hopefully increase their quality of life and certainly bring the supports to them that they require. In terms of the time limit required, it is a part of this temporary. We know that this location isn't something that the city supports. We know that I've read the letters of concern from neighboring businesses. So we are working hard to identify other options. Unfortunately, site locations are very difficult to find. And we often don't, you can't find a site that everyone is going to be supportive of. There's always going to be risks that we have to mitigate, and we do across the province. I think we have a number of very good shelter operations that we work really hard with our nonprofit operators to be effective and to problem solve where necessary, and to do all we can to work with other providers to bring services in. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm available to answer questions that you have.
Just one last question of Nanette, please, because I'm just a little, the comments we heard earlier from BC Housing and what Sheila said are somewhat contradictory. When I made the statement that increasing beds will increase the number of homeless coming to the shelter, Sheila, you say, no, it'll be the same people. They have a tie to trail. Yet when we talk to BC Housing and we're discussing ideally the number of beds we would like to provide, whether it be 30, 40, or 50, the comment is, well, you don't want to go too high to exceed your needs, because if you exceed the need, then you will attract more people and people will be placed here to take up those beds. So unless I'm talking two totally different subjects, those two statements from the statement from Sheila and what we heard earlier from BC Housing are contradictory.
So Councillor Santori, I'm just going to clarify that I made that statement when asked about capacity, and I wasn't talking about shelter beds. I was talking about supportive housing beds. And when a build is made for supportive housing, that the institution is not going to be left vacant. So you can have a funding model or a placement model of doing priority to your local vulnerable population. But my example was, if you have a supportive housing complex with 50 beds and you have 5 local people, you will have that. There's a high chance that you will have that facility filled with potentially not people from your local area. So you're mixing two conversations up, because Sheila's talking about shelter beds and I was talking about supportive housing beds, which are two different intakes.
My apologies to BC Housing. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So is there someone else from BC Housing that would like to speak? No? Okay, Michelle, next.
Next would be Jennifer Driuti, who is standing by, and I believe she would like to address council.
Go ahead, Jennifer. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak on this. I understand that people are trying to give support for unfortunates, and it is a terrible time. However, I just received notice from one of my tenants because of the people around the sidewalk coming out of the alleyway, and she has lived there for 1.5 years and she does not feel comfortable. Also, I work and live in Castlegar, and all my family is from Trail. I love Trail. But it's disappointing to hear what Castlegar has to say. There were not that long ago, with the bridges being done and the flowers, and people were talking so positively about Trail, that I was like, well, I'd like to do something in Trail myself. But to hear what they have to say now, and I get teased or mocked on a regular basis about having a place near Little Hastings, and I feel bad for Trail. Like, I don't understand why we couldn't figure out a different place to put this, because other communities like Nelson have them on the outskirts, and having something like this in the heart of a town is, I think, a little bit detrimental myself.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I just want to say that I think your point is acknowledged with respect to placement, and that is a lot of the conversation that we are having. It was never intended for the shelter as it is now to be a full-time shelter in that location. And with the onset of the opioid pandemic, with the housing crisis, and with COVID, it has just accentuated a need across BC and across Canada. This is not a trail problem. There's homeless people in Castlegar, Nelson, Grand Forks, in every single community across our province. And I'm really proud of the work that our collective group is doing to try to mitigate and manage a very, very difficult problem. So
It is a difficult problem, and I'm not minimizing the fact that other communities have the same issues we do. I'm saying in the heart of a beautiful community, and it is a beautiful community, there's so many things that Trail has to offer and people love going there. But I have heard people talking about it, and that is disappointing because I think it's one of the nicest communities around. That's
Thank
how
you.
I feel.
Yeah, so we are actively looking for a different location for the shelter, realizing that what is happening there and the location is not ideal for our downtown core.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Anyone else, Michelle?
Not that I am aware of, no.
Okay, so I have, does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Dobie, do you have your hand up? You're really backlit and you basically look like a shadow. So you probably need to fix that for us to see your face. Councillor Kashoni, I'm going to go with you because your hand's up and we can actually see your face. So go for it.
I just wonder what the process is now. Are we going, rather than asking questions, are we going to go to a motion where people can speak for and against? Michelle?
That would be the intention, yes. So once we've received the input from both the applicant as well as everyone who has provided notice of council's consideration, unless council has any specific questions that you need answered, it would now be to council to determine whether or not to issue the temporary use permit. And if so, if there is any conditions that you would like to add and what term you would authorize for the first issuance. So unless council has any specific questions, the staff recommendation, just to remind council, was that the issuance of the temporary use permit be for a 1-year term, and we would suggest that some conditions be associated. One would be for cleanup of waste and discarded materials, and another might be for the requirement to provide security services on a 24/7 basis.
Okay, Councillor Dobie, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Payson. Just adding to what Councillor Santori had said about the feelings of council, because I think just about every one of the council members here were born and grew up in this city. So I know myself, I consider this my town. And when this first started, I'm going to go back almost a year ago, we started to see businesses closing down access to their washrooms. And we have probably at least 6 to 8 businesses now in the downtown core that keep their doors locked, because nobody can come into the business unless they're given access by the owner. We have businesses, and I have worked probably from the spring until the start of the summer with about 6 core businesses right in the area of the CDS alley that are just absolutely beyond desperate. They've had it. They don't know where to turn anymore. I don't know if you're aware, but the Bank of Montreal has 2 options right now. They're either going to spend money and upgrade the bank, or they're going to move the facility. They're not going to stay in the downtown core. We have another business that is thinking of putting their business up for sale, which is a key business to this town, is a big draw into Trail. And I know 2 other very, very prominent businessmen that have had a great effect on this city and worked hard for it. They've both purchased houses in Kelowna. So I think you want to start to fill in the gaps. You can see where some of these business owners are heading. And the number of people that are on the street right now, and I'm guessing maybe we have 30, 35 at max. That's a very, very small percentage in terms of the whole population. And I find it extremely frustrating that such a small group of people, and I understand their issues because I have spent time in the alley in the evening, taking coffee down on more than 2 or 3 occasions and talking to some of these people and trying to get to know them a little. So I feel for them, and I'm angry that the provincial government has put us as councillors into this position to make this kind of decision when this was all starting 2 or 3 years ago. And we started asking well over a year ago now for help in our downtown core. And I'm sure you have too, Sheila. So I have to support the businesses and say that I can't see them having to put up with any increase to what's continuing going on with defecation, with needles. I know the manager of the Bank of Montreal comes in early every morning because she has to clean all that type of stuff up before she can open the bank to allow the customers to come in. So I just think we're not giving enough voice and enough support to the businesses that are dealing with this, and they slowly are going under. So I can't support the supportive housing increase or the CDS increase to overnight accommodation in that location. And I feel very sad at having to say that because I hate the thought that people might be sleeping outside because of that. But I can't hold the businessman in, I guess, an entrapment anymore with this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jones, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, I did. So I actually do have some question for Sheila, but I just want to remind everybody what the City of Trail has already done previously, the work that we've done, especially just before summer, where we increased our bylaw enforcements. We had extra policing down there, foot patrols by police. Even CDS was more involved in the shelter alley for the summer months. Selkirk Security was doing more walkabouts. We had, it was like all hands on deck. And I don't know what happened, but things seem to have been slowing down a little bit there. And I wanted to ask Sheila, if we open this shelter for 10 extra beds, that's 10 extra people that you're dealing with. I don't know, are you prepared? Are you prepared to offer those people all the help and resources that they need to make a difference for them? But also, you know, what are we going to be able to tell our business down there and our, you know, stakeholders downtown City of Trail, where as counselors, when we go into these businesses, we constantly get reminded of what's going down there, what's going on down there. Just a couple of examples, and I know you've all heard this before, but I went into the BC Access building to get my driver's license renewed, and the staff in there are under constant threat of people on the streets because they have to open their washrooms to those people. And so they're constantly watching each other for their safety, and while trying to provide work for people that come in, the taxpayers, the citizens of this community, the, you know, people of the province. The Royal Theatre, who just opened, you know, did a major renovation there for around $1 million. Can't even go back in their back alley to put the garbage out without being, you know, interfacing with some of the people that have now opened up tents and a extra sleeping quarters behind the CDS building there. You know, my library board director every morning, because she doesn't want her staff involved with it, goes out and cleans up in the library back alley. So, I mean, I think it's a tough position for council to be on right now, because we see what people are talking about. We see what is happening in our community, on our streets. We see it too. And we're in the same place as they are. Where do we go with this? What do we do? How do we help them? I believe, and I strongly believe, that these people are a responsibility. They're part of our community. They're part of our responsibility. But we've worked hard. We've worked really hard. And I know there's still a lot of work ahead of us to help these people out and to be there for our businesses. And we have no answers. It doesn't matter, meeting after meeting, BC Housing, everybody that we talk to, Interior Health, like we're all trying to do the work.
So you had a question, Colleen, about about the capacity. Right now, it's not going to bring anybody else, more people to the shelter. It's the same people that are there right now. They're in the back alley. What it will do was help us to accommodate them indoors. And you ask about whether we can provide services. We can't now have the mental health nurse, the street nurse. We can't have anchors. We can't have anybody come in and meet with them in the shelter because there's no space. We have 2 rooms. One is the kitchen, which they're not in. So we have 1 room. We can't have that many people in there meeting. There's no place to, and so what we're proposing is if we open up it's just putting in the beds of the people that are already there. So if we open up the basement, we'll have twice the amount of space, and we'll be able to have Interior Health, mental health workers come in. Interior Health, we've worked with them, and they've hired a street nurse as well as an outreach worker that's going out 3 to 4 times a week. And they are able to meet them in the back alley, but they can't come inside. There's not enough room. When there's enough room, there's space to meet. They'll be able to come in and get on some opioid treatment programs, have a place to be where they feel safe and not have to wait outside, come back in a bit, then they go off. So we see that the only reason that we've got the tents out behind CDS right now is because there was no way to isolate anybody that was COVID positive. Where could we put them? In the tents? The bylaw moved the same guy 3 times because they can't be in the park. So we were there is no place in Trail. So that's where there is nobody now isolating, but we can't bring them in. We can't keep saying you can't be here, but we don't know where you should go. So this way we can say you can't be here, you need to be in the shelter. And that's where you need to be. We have been, like I said, we do have 3 times the staff out on the streets now that we didn't have before. But we also have a program where we painted a lot of the graffiti in the back alleys. We go clean up feces when anybody calls, anything like that. So we haven't had too much. The back alley is actually pretty good. I mean, I walk through there twice a day myself and look. And if there's anything imminent, then I call the team right away. We get over there to clean it up. And the shelter guests, we're handing them out gift cards. There's 3 or 4 that clean up. I saw one of the guys, I spend the day going out trying to find them being good. I found 2 of the guys the other day. They were cleaning up garbage that Baird spilt in front of the library. They were pretty upset about that. They went over, they got a bag from us. They went and cleaned it up. Another guy goes around every day looking for garbage to pick up and helps and asks for a bucket of paint to paint some of the graffiti and clean things up. So we are acknowledging the ones out there that are being good. There's a few that are they're like with any community that may need that extra support, but we can't support them to get well when they're living on the street because every day is just a fight. So until we can get them in and get them warm and fed, it's just going to escalate. It'll escalate this winter to where there are people dying out in the back alleys, which is a pretty black mark. Because if they can't come into the shelter, we can't have them in there. They will be on the streets. Mm-hmm. And they will be in there. They'll be in the back alleys behind the businesses. They'll be in their little alcoves. They'll be underneath the little hidey holes like they were, in past winters. And that's not going to be safe for anybody. And it's definitely going to be a black mark if we lose people because we can't offer them a bed for sure.
Councillor Santori, you had your hand up?
I don't want to prolong this, Sheila. And I guess that you're trying to convince us that the numbers won't go up. The numbers have already gone up. The opioid crisis has been around for a long time now, and it wasn't too long ago, there was 2 or 3 homeless people in the alley. Then it climbed to 6, then 10, then 12, then 15. Now 22 is the last number or the last count. I don't know how you can say, well, it's not going to jump from 22 to 28 or 30 or 35. It's already happening. Now, having said that, before council makes a decision on whether to extend this, here's their dilemma. If we don't approve the this temporary facility, if they're not, at least this way they're indoors and less apt to cause any damages because they're being fed. If we don't approve it, it's not like they're going to pack their bags and move to Yak or Weimar or Cranbrook or Penticton or Vernon. They're going to be out on the streets. And it's going to compound the problem even more than we have now. So until such time as proper housing facilities and a proper housing location with all, I wouldn't want your job for $1 million, Sheila. There's nothing that you can do that's going to solve this problem. There are bigger players in this at the end of the day, be it the justice system, be it health. Do we go back to the days of the woodlands and institutions and mandatory treatments? I don't know what the answers are, but whatever it is government is doing now is not happening. And the burden is falling on people like you, Sheila, where we expect you to come up with all the answers and the solutions. So I totally get that you can't do that. And you have to manage the dilemma that you have before you. But I think I don't want to see an extension of beds. Nobody wants to see an extension. Having said that, though, I'd rather them being indoors and being fed and somewhat being taken care of to the best of the resources that you have than not allowing those additional beds and having those people on the streets, possibly dying or doing more damage and worsening our image worse than it already is. So, I mean, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. Excuse my terminology, but there's no silver lining in this whatsoever.
Can I just make one more comment about the
Yes,
increase?
go ahead.
Just
Go ahead.
about the increase of individuals. Do you know in the past 2 weeks, we've done intakes in our getting to home population where 6 seniors have been ousted due to the rental crisis. 17 years, this gentleman has lived and rented in his home. The owner is selling it. We have seniors that we're going to have to move to the shelter because there is no place for them. So increase, absolutely, yes. It's not going to be increased. I don't anticipate that there's going to be an increase in the amount of shelter guests that we have now that have mental health and addictions issues. But we are seriously, by the end of this week, going to have to move a 79-year-old man to the shelter because he has no place to live and his house was sold. Those are the new shelter guests.
Yeah.
Because they have nowhere to go and the houses are being sold, and we've had 6 intakes this week and we have no place for them to rent. So they will be shelter guests because there's no place to be. So there will be an increase, yes, but the increase isn't going to be in the mental health and addictions. It's going to be in seniors that are ousted from their homes that can't afford to find a place to rent. When you're renting a 1-bedroom for $1,750 a month and doesn't include in utilities, and the houses are the market right now is going crazy. They're all being sold and tenants are being put out on their ear 3 months notice. And like I said, we are moving seniors with their little bags into the shelter because there's no other place. So it will increase, but it's not the population you're thinking. It's a sad state when that's where people are going to end up because there's nothing else. So that will be increased, and so that will be an increase. I don't see that there's going to be more street people or more people with addictions issues coming to town. It's going to be a totally different population that scares the heck out of me. So.
Okay, Councillor Dobie, and you're on mute.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, Ms. Adcock. If you were looking at 10 more beds, are you saying that 6 of those could be utilized by people that are now losing their present accommodation? And so we'll only be providing 4 beds to street people?
Well, it depends on how many we've got coming through the door. We're trying to meet the need, and that's the ones that are coming there right now are 16 to 20. And if we have any more, then yeah, we're we're gonna end up having to put mats on the floor upstairs too, but that includes the people that we've got in the getting to home list. So when
Okay.
I'm talking about shelter guests and the ones that are homeless that we're doing intakes for the getting to home, those are the ones that we're trying to support through this 18 beds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think I'm just gonna make a comment now. So, I've said this before, I don't think when any of us joined up to be an elected official that we were intending on spending this much time dealing with an opioid crisis, a COVID pandemic, and a homeless situation. But, you know, we're all sitting here today, we all have a voice, we're in the decision-making position in our community, and this is basically where the rubber hits the road. Yep, we heard from BC Housing. If supportive housing is approved, it's going to be a while. It's not a pop-up shelter, it's a building, there's a lot of hurdles, it's a process. So what we need to focus on right now is the shelter. A, it's in the wrong location, but B, we have winter coming. And what are we going to do to try to manage the population of vulnerable people that are hanging out behind the shelter? And, you know, we can sit here and complain to BC Housing about them not stepping up. But BC Housing is here before us today with money, saying we support this application to have shelter beds expanded. Is this the best solution? No, it's not. It's not. I would love to have a different shelter in a different location so that it's outside of the downtown core, so that our shoppers, our people that live downtown, and our businesses are not so affected. I think there's a perspective problem here as well, that typically it's been what happens within the shelter is the responsibility of the shelter contract owners, and I think that needs to change. It's no different from any other business. You know, if you have someone who is acting inappropriately, who's leaving a mess outside of any other business, that is the responsibility of that business to take care of that. So I think there needs to be a widening of a scope of responsibility for CDS, to be looking at the entirety of the premises and what happens in the front and the back, as well as indoors. But, you know, if we do nothing, if we make a decision to do nothing, nothing is going to change, and it's definitely not going to get better. I think if anything, it's probably going to get worse through the winter. So we have the opportunity to make a decision on, are we going to extend a temporary permit for amount of time that council would be agreeable to, and to put some pretty significant restrictions on operations like 24/7 security. We've never had 24/7 security designated outside the back door, that shelter. And I would like to think that if council made that a requirement, that think of the Bank of Montreal and think about the Colander and the other businesses, Grant Thornton, McEwen and Company, what a difference it might make to them to have 24/7 security outside that back door. I mean, that I would assume that would hopefully decrease confrontation. The waste and the discarded materials, have that removed daily and not just once a day. Have a more aggressive monitoring system and campaign with people going out there and cleaning up surrounding businesses. And yes, that costs money, but BC Housing, from what I understand, is willing to step up and help us with this interim solution to a chronic problem that we are trying to manage as a community. So is it the best solution? No, it's absolutely not the best solution, but it will hopefully help the businesses. Hopefully it'll help the vulnerable population, to provide more beds, to get people out of that back alley and have that back alley monitored so it's safer for everyone. So that's my feelings on it. Is there anyone else from council that hasn't spoken that wishes to speak? Councillor Kashoni? You're on mute too.
I guess those are assumptions. I'm not sure if that's what Nanette there is actually promising. Is Nanette there from BC Housing promising a 24-hour surveillance outside the back door? Are they going to fund that? Are they going to fund this extra cleanup? Are they going to fund this? I asked Nanette that particular question. Is BC Housing, if we put conditions on this particular situation, is BC Housing going to fund those particular positions that might come from restrictions we put on? Because otherwise we can say, oh, well, let's have 24-hour thing. Let's have this, let's have that, as you know, Mayor Payson has said, and BC Housing can decide not to do anything at all about it. And then Sheila can't afford to do that. And it doesn't increase, it won't increase her the money she's getting. So she won't be able to do that unless BC Housing agrees to that. So think about it before you make a decision, because if in fact BC Housing is not willing to step up to it, you've got a situation where things will get worse, and they will get worse because we've seen it get worse over the course of time. We've spent, and I'm not speaking for or against it right now, but I might as well make the comment as Mayor Payson says, we spent over $2 million in Communities in Bloom over the last 20 years, trying to make Trails image better. 2 million just in the Communities in Bloom, and almost 2 million in terms of finding people jobs and bringing businesses in, and that's almost $4 million we've invested over the next 20 years. And we go now, and people say, everywhere I go, I talk to people, everybody says, you know, I'm afraid of this. I don't like going downtown. I don't want to do this. Yes, these people are disadvantaged. There's no doubt about it. Many of them, in fact, are mental health patients or whatever they are. They're addicted or whatever they happen to be. But don't think by putting 10 extra beds in that basement in a downtown core that you're actually going to do something unless you get some specific promises from BC Housing that they're going to fund some of these conditions that we may or may not put on this particular extension for a year. Thank you.
So Councillor Kashoni, before I hand it over to Nanette, because I see her hand is up, what I was saying was make a motion that had specific conditions in it, whereby if BC Housing chose not, that was not a direction that they could go, that obviously the shelter expansion would not be approved. We make conditions on motions all the time. This isn't anything new. So I'm going to turn that over to Nanette to speak to.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, I'd agree with exactly how you put that. I mean, if it's a condition of the temporary use permit and we want to support the society's application, then of course we would fund it. What I do want to talk about though is that we've had in other sites where we've had security, and I spoke to this a little bit in my comments earlier, that sometimes it's availability of the security. So they're not available. So you can't have a 24/7 presence. Some are ineffective because they sit in their car and they're not prepared to engage, or they don't have good and appropriate engagement skills and they escalate situations, or they move people along to where. So don't think that it's going to solve all the problems. It will help to manage the situation and give the community a sense that certainly we support the society in maintaining a safe and secure shelter and ensuring that we are doing all we can from a risk mitigation perspective to make sure that the businesses feel supported in trying to still do their business beside a shelter. So that's what I would say to that. We also have migrated in some locations away from security to actually have shelter staff do like a neighborhood watch where it is 24/7 and it's trained people who actually have crisis de-escalation, have some mental health first aid training, really understand the population, and they work to engage with the people. That's what really helps, is when people feel connected and engaged, they will feel like they can access shelter services, and we can do a heck of a lot more with them to try and assist them in improving their quality of life. I just want to comment that we are approaching winter, and so it's about, you know, maintaining lives here. There are a number of people whose health is so compromised right now, and Sheila talks about the seniors. We are seeing that all over, where you have, you know, stable populations essentially that are, the houses are being sold out from under them, long-term rentals, and they have nowhere to go because there's no more rentals. And so it's just the homelessness has a variety of different faces. And this is one opportunity to put 10 beds in and try and reduce some of the issues that you're seeing in Trail.
Michelle, go ahead.
I didn't have anything.
Oh,
to
you
add.
didn't have something? Oh, okay, I saw your a box light up around your face there. Did anyone else from council want to ask a question?
Just a question of Michelle. If council approves the 1 year temporary use permit, when it comes time, and if a request comes for an extension, is the extension equal to the original time, or can the extension be up to 3 years?
The extension could be up to 3 years.
Okay.
And
Councillor Butler, go ahead.
just a question for Michelle around the conditions. How do we go about including conditions in the motion? Would it just be a motion put forward, or?
You would want to include at least some generalities around whatever conditions. So as we just heard from Ms. Drobot, perhaps a 24/7 security, if that's what council is hoping for, might not be achievable if there isn't a security firm locally available to provide that. So perhaps a condition could instead be worded that added security be provided during normal business hours. So if we look at the times of our operating businesses there who are facing those disruptions, be it 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Might be a bit more manageable just in case that 24/7 couldn't be provided. But you would want to be specific in your resolution around what sort of conditions, and as specific as possible, that you would like attached.
I think, can we not make a motion to extend or to provide the temporary use permit subject to conditions to be disclosed within 30 days or something? I mean, I think all council members would like to give some thought as to what those conditions might be. We may have to call Nanette and say, look, what have you found to be more successful than others? What were complete failures? And then maybe build those conditions around some input from BC Housing in terms of what worked and what didn't work, and talk to Sheila in terms of what's doable, what isn't, what can work and what won't work, to come up with some conditions here at the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
May not help us. So we can still, if council wishes, allow and give them some, give Sheila some comfort that this temporary permit will be issued, but give council some time, even if it's done by email, in terms of some of the conditions. I mean, I would like to spend 10 minutes on the phone with Nanette and learn from her experiences what worked and what didn't work, and then put something like that forward, rather than us trying to come up with something at the spur of the moment.
So why couldn't you, just to be devil's advocate, why couldn't you put in the motion on the condition of enhanced security up to 24/7, right? So enhanced security or enhanced surveillance, and then it punts it to Sheila and BC Housing to figure out, does that mean we hire more staff and the staff are doing the surveillance because that's a trail fit? Or do you actually hire Selkirk Security as a security company who might not have any de-escalation skills? So we're indicating that the intent is we need this, we need some level and customized security for this premises 24/7, if at all possible. And because I do not feel comfortable saying we are going to extend this for X amount of time and then come back in 2 weeks and say, oh, subject to. I mean, we can always, I think there's a way we can find a middle road here. And I don't think it's also fair to the businesses to say, yeah, we're gonna say 10 more beds, but we can't decide on a basic motion for security. And that whether it's
I get it with security, but I thought maybe there would be more components to the conditions that we put forward, like cleanliness, frequency of cleaning and I don't know. I haven't really given it a lot of thought. It's in front of us today in terms of conditions that we want to attach to it. So fine, whoever wants to make the motion, then we'll just take it from there.
Lisa, I'm sorry, Mayor Payne, I don't really think you can structure this motion right now. For example, one thing I would like to see, if in fact what Sheila says is true, that there are seniors, the first intake condition I would put on it is that seniors who are dislocated because of whatever reason, they be the first people to be afforded those particular beds. So that would be one of my conditions, because those people, those seniors, they're not going to really cause the kind of problems we're having with these other people who are drug addicted or mentally unstable or whatever it happens to be. So that would be a condition I would want, because if in fact there's 10 seniors out there, I want those 10 seniors protected over the winter, not 10 people who are addicted or something else. So that would be one of my, one of the things I think they should probably defer this until such time as we can get through emails what people want to see in there. And I think that I don't think you're really going to get it solved right tonight. The motion is going to be solved tonight. Thank you.
I will make a comment, Councillor, that our mandate and our protocol is if there's too many seeking beds, women and seniors come first. So we wouldn't turn a senior away. Typically, it's women and seniors first, and after that, we fill the beds.
That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Butler, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we can come to a common ground. I mean, it seems that we have 5 key issues to me that we're all asking for here tonight. And those in my summary of events, and maybe the 5th one is in my own head and I haven't expressed it yet, but women and senior priority, 24/7 security, if available, a 1-year maximum term, 1 to 2 daily cleanings, of course, and then I would also like to see an active search update provided by BC Housing every second meeting, recognize, i.e. once a month, now that we are going into the 2 meetings per month season. Because the other feeling I'm having here is it's a bit like paying off your interest on your credit card, what we're doing right now. We're throwing money at a solution. The real solution here is an actual construction of housing. And I mean, I think I heard earlier the number $357,000. Some of these properties we're looking at are not 2 years. We're just going to be throwing money away for 2 years. If we took that money and bought a property today with it, is probably the price we're looking at some of these properties. So I think I am in favor of definitely extending this, but with conditions. But I think if we can come to some kind of solution to this with 5 key points or 6 key points, if there's others out there, I don't know if there is or not, but if there are, I think, some of these are good points, but they are, what I'm trying to say is they're difficult conditions. I recognize that to meet, but I think they're important that we put these conditions on it so that this just is not an ever ongoing issue within our community. Thank you.
Make that a motion, Paul.
Well, I guess maybe my question for the councillors are those the 5 points or 5 conditions that most of us are sort of seeing here tonight?
Personally, I think you hit the top 5.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is that, there's the accountability piece for CDS to continue to assist with the Sharps cleanups, et cetera, feces cleanups with surrounding businesses when they call. I think Sheila has, said that has given the surrounding businesses her contact. And so there is the support there, hopefully with extra manpower there, that can be facilitated a little bit more, because I do acknowledge the fact that what's happening inside the shelter is probably a priority, and you have to work in tandem, right? So one person can't go out and pick up Sharps with the other person in the shelter. There's work safety issues here that we need to handle. So I'm fine, Counselor Butler, with the 5 that you put forward. I think BC Housing and CDS can come back to us and say, you know what, with respect to security, this is what we can get for now. This is the best solution, and we will work to continued enhance whatever that looks like, for example. But, you know, CDS also needs to make plans here. You know, their staff need to make plans. If they need to be able to have the endorsement to be able to hire more staff and get those announcements out to get more people to help. Otherwise, we're, you know, a 2-week delay. I'm just not sure if it's going to serve the situation.
Correct. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Mayor Payson. And I mean, the last thing other comment, you know, reading all the letters for and against, I mean, I get both sides. I mean, and there are, Councillor Dobie has some really valid points about the businesses, you know, and I mean, we are also like dealing with human beings here and members of our families and community members. So I think a balance needs to be, you know, struck. But like I said, I think with some conditions that, you know, that we feel comfortable knowing going forward, hopefully will be met and can work to a better long-term solution than what we currently have. So I guess that being said, I'd like to put a motion to extend on with those 5 points or 5 conditions in mind. Just to reiterate, women and senior priority, 24/7 security if available, a maximum of 1 year, an active search report updating from BC Housing once a month, i.e. every other second meeting if appropriate. And then to Mayor Payson's point, 1 to 2 daily cleaning, i.e. with anchors, needle collection, etc., those kinds of things.
Okay, I'll second that.
Question on the motion?
Okay, does anyone else have anything else to ask? Okay, and I'm going to need hands up for this. So all in favor of the motion? And against? I see Councillor Dobie against, and Councillor Gattafoni Robinson is not in this part of the meeting, so motion is carried. Thank you. We need to call Councillor Gattafoni Robinson and get her back in the room. So BC Housing, anyone who is associated with the temporary use permit of 1465 Bay Avenue, you do not have to stay for the rest of the meeting. If you would like to click off, you are more than welcome to do that. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson's back. That's great. Item number 3.2 is 1650 McLean Avenue temporary use permit application. And Ms. McIsaac, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the city is in receipt of an application from Heather Sloan, who is wishing to operate a pet grooming business from within the premises at 1650 McLean Street, which is owned by Margaret or Maggie McMahon. The property in question at 1650 McLean Street is formerly owned by the Fraternal Order of Eagles and was utilized for fraternal organization purposes. So the zoning of it is institutional zone P1. So with a change to some commercial uses being proposed, it's necessary to either walk through a rezoning process for the property owner, or in this case, because the full use of the premises hasn't yet been determined, but there's a very immediate interest from Heather Sloan to operate the pet grooming business from within one small space in the building. It is being advanced as a temporary use permit. So similar to the application that council just considered, with a temporary use permit, you can allow a use that isn't presently permitted by the zoning bylaw. Its term could be up to 3 years and can be renewed only once. With respect to public notification around this proposal, all property owners and occupants were notified that council would be considering the application at tonight's meeting and provided opportunity to provide some input. We do have Heather Sloan here as the applicant, and we have the property owner, Maggie McMahon, also in attendance, so it would be appropriate for council to hear from them. But just to let council know that as a result of both the public notification and the advertising that's placed in the Trail Times, we have not had anyone advancing any concerns with respect to the issuance of this permit, nor would it necessarily trigger any particular conditions. So in the circumstances here, it would be considered feasible for a 3-year permit to be issued. This will allow Ms. McMahon time to formalize what the full scope of uses at the business or at the premise will be and to apply for a rezoning, but would allow Heather Sloan as the applicant and the business owner to operate her Dirty to Pretty pet grooming business from within the premises on a short-term basis. And with that, I would turn it over to Heather Sloan as the applicant if she wishes to address council.
Okay, Heather, you're on mute. Please go for it.
Oh, thank you very much for allowing me to speak for you guys today. Yes, I would like to have a pet grooming business in the basement of 1650 McLean. It is about a 14 by 15 foot square space. 14 by 15 foot space. And it's an already established, I already have established clientele from when I used to work at Tails. So there's no impact to the environment because I use no chemicals. There's no dogs off leash. There's no pet waste. And all of the pet hair is actually put into, it's recycled at this point. So, and I have all COVID-19 protocols available. And that's all.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. McMahon, do you have anything to add?
I had nothing to say. I was just here to support Heather, and thank you so much. Thank you for even considering this. Colleen, I owe you a dozen roses for getting this through, for cutting through a foot of red tape and hundreds of dollars for me. Thank you so much. Heather's a young girl. She wants to reestablish her business. It's part-time and perfect location. It's quiet. She's a quiet girl. It just seems a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for either Heather or Maggie?
No, I'll move approval.
Okay, Councillor Kashoni is moving approval. Do I have someone to second that?
I'll second it.
Councillor Santori, are you
Just
moving
speaking in,
approval or
just
do you have a
speaking in-
question?
well, just speaking in favor of it, just speaking in favor of the thing. Thank you, Maggie and Heather, for waiting so long. I know it must have been gruesome to wait that long before you got to this position. Thank you very much.
It actually wasn't, sir. Terribly, terribly interesting to see you people at work.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions for Maggie or Heather?
Can I just, Mayor Payson, make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Maggie and well, Heather for starting this business because my dog's been waiting for a haircut. But I think what Maggie's done for the neighborhood there, and I hope that people have had a chance to drive by and look at the hall, because that's what it's called now. It's, been painted very, very uniquely. It looks wonderful in that neighborhood, and it's really going to add to the to the development and enhance the scenery in that part of the neck of the woods. So yeah, just a big thank you, and thanks for being here tonight.
Great. Okay, so we have, go ahead, Ms. McIsaac.
I just want to be clear before council does vote that the motion of council was for a 3-year term as was being suggested by staff. Thank you.
Councillor Kashoni and Councillor Santori, you're authorizing that?
3
Okay,
years.
that's your motion, perfect. Okay, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Heather. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. Thanks very much. Enjoy your evening. Okay, next item 3.3 is proclamations. There's 2 proclamations: Waste Reduction Week in Canada, which is October 18th to 24th, and Foster Family Month, which is the month of October. So the recommendation is that council proclaim October 18th to 24th, 2021 as Waste Reduction Week, and the month of October 2021 as Foster Family Month in the City of Trail. So do I have someone to make that recommendation?
So moved. I will.
Councillor Jones and Councillor Butler, does anyone have any questions or comments on this matter? Hearing none, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to council committee reports. Councillor Kashoni, you're first.
Thank you. The first one would be the contribution of $145,000 from the regional district to the our Trail and District Arts Council for the rigging system and the Bailey Theatre. They actually were able to raise $1,178,687, which was in fact more than the rigging would cost. It started out quite low, but it ended up being over $800,000, and the bid went to Martech, which is a local company, which was really good. The next one would be the section on the Columbia Basin Trust Board. We're still looking for a representative for that particular board. It'll be hopefully discussed on the 27th, and generally it's for a period of 3 years and can be extended for another period of 3 years. The RDKB supports the BC Winter Games bid. The RDKB is going to send a letter to the City of Trail indicating its support for Trail and Rossland's joint bid to host the 2026 Winter Games. And the last time the Trail hosted the games was in 2006. The borrowing need for the solid waste services. We did not get the grant for the McKelvey Creek, which was really disappointing because I thought for sure that one would go through. So that there will be a borrowing over the next number of years for solid waste projects. It'll be the implementation of the residential curbside green bin collection at McKelvey Creek, the McKelvey Creek landfill upgrade, which will include the transfer station, Grand Forks facility upgrade project, which will include an extra section for the organic diversion, the McKelvey Creek landfill operations upgrades, which will include a second scale, and then we're going to get a wood grinder, which is over $1 million. Just to give you an idea of the cost, that wood grinder, the first estimate was around $600,000. And the last estimate came in well over $1 million. So those are the major issues on that section. The other one would be the cost allocation policy has been discussed. It has passed the first stage. The cost allocation policy is a policy that attributes cost to the service rather than just to general administration. So what we have in that particular section is about $132,000 of additional cost in the fire service. And oh, hang on a second. I lost you. I lost my picture. Oh, there, I'm sorry. And so $132,000 extra in the fire service and $50,000 extra in liquid waste. Now, that's not going to be a final cost because it'll be distributed when we pay for the things out of the services. Sorry about the phone. When we pay for the administrative costs through the services, there will be a reduction in 001. but we still haven't got the calculations done. But right now, the bill will be $182,000 for the East End. The next one is the animal control, and that's another real problem. The animal control budget was set for $87,000 last year, and the proposal came in from the BC Animal Control, BCSPCA, at 161,000. So we had an $87,000 budget last year. Now it's 161,000, and that is an increase of 72%. So that's a real issue, and we may, as a municipality, may be wanting to look at contracting our own animal control, because you have to remember that of that $161,000, the city of Trail is going to pay approximately 40% of it. So we're paying 40% of the cost increase.
Robert, how did they justify doubling? What justification did BCSPCA give in terms of doubling it from 80 something to 160 something?
Well, it was a very unusual situation. They talked, well, first of all, I can tell you one thing, because somebody shot at somebody somewhere in the province. We're going to have to buy Kevlar vests for everybody. And I think a Kevlar vest is over $1,000 each. They say gas has gone up. They use gas. They actually now require further training for their officers. You know, they're located in Castlegar too, but what I've asked for, and I recognize your question, Sandy, is I've asked for a breakdown on how many incidents occur in Trail in comparison to Trail, Rossland, et cetera, because we're paying a major part of that particular cost, and I think we need to know whether or not it's valuable enough to have that increase. And my position will be that we need to negotiate that 161,000.
Thank you.
Now the transit exchange, we had we haven't had a meeting for so long. The transit exchange is moving forward. They're going to come back to council, but when I told you they had one at El Dorado and Cedar there, now they've got three still options on the table. They tell us today that there's still three options on the table, and that we as a council are going to have to make the decision on which one we're going to be going with. But everything is moving forward. The Nelson Exchange is moving forward. Just for example, in the city, in our transit area in the East End, we've moved from 400,000 trips a year down to 200,000 trips a year. And that's how much money we've lost. And plus now we'll have to have the people who are 12 and under, from 6 to 12, we can't charge them any longer. So they've determined that it's about a $6,000 cost. And I'm suspect about the fact that there's a $6,000 cost, but we have no opportunity to negotiate with them. So they've given us $6,000 extra to cover all of the kids from 6 years to 12 years there. So the priorities on the exchange will be coming forth to council, and the rest of that, we're fully into the budget. It's way earlier than we normally have the budget allocations, and this cost allocation policy is going to take at least a month and a half to sort out. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Kashoni. Go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, but wouldn't the ridership be down because of COVID?
Well, it is down from COVID, but we kind of expected it to start rising again, and it really hasn't risen that much in terms of the impact. So we've got $360,000 to offset the costs. And what administration tells us yesterday, before we had this particular meeting, because we had a little talk with them, is that we probably will be able to cover the cost of the loss of revenue in 2020 and 2021 if we apply the entire $360,000 to the fare box, because that's where we really make a big portion of our money back, is when they pay the fare. So we're going to use pretty well all of the $360,000 in order to balance the budget. And we do have considerable reserves, but those reserves are not designed to offset this drop in fare revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay, Colleen?
Yeah, no, that's good. That makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Doby, and you're on mute.
Councillor Kashoni, when you talked about the wood cutting machine, which was going to be over $1 million,
Right, grinder, yeah.
Grinder. Is there a product that is saleable so we can recover some of that cost? I mean,
Well,
what
we haven't-
happens with all the chips? Are those going to be sold or going into mulching or?
Well, the chips are going to, in Grand Forks, all the chips, all the mulching is going to go into the landfill, into the organic diversion, even large parts of trees and everything, because this chipper can chip really big stuff. And then when we need the chipper, it's mobile. We'll be able to hook it up and haul it over to the McKelvey Creek and then chip everything at McKelvey Creek. All the stuff that's chipped at McKelvey Creek will be going to Selmo because the Central Kootenai has secured property in Selmo for the organic diversion. So it'll all be, all the stuff in McKelvey Creek will be chipped by that $1 million chipper.
So where will the chipper be in the meantime when it's not?
Well, we leave it at Grand Forks so they chip constantly. When we have enough buildup at McKelvey Creek, then we take the chipper and move it to McKelvey Creek and then chip everything we can.
Okay, so there's no cost recovery with this?
No, the old chipper is probably worth, nobody really wants to buy an old chipper, but so we may be able to get a few bucks for it, but it's just like anything else. You can't get much for them.
Thank you.
But you have to have this machine in order to do organic diversion.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Councillor Kashoni? Seeing none, Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, go ahead. And you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Thank you. I would just like to report on the Historical Society. I've been working with some of the board members and they're putting together a guide to historic places in Trail. And it's been very, very interesting. It includes buildings, murals, stairways, rock walls. And it's been very, very enlightening and they're working very, very hard on it. And we should be close to printing pretty soon, but I'll keep you all posted, but it's been very, very interesting. Those are my reports, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Gattafoni Robinson? Seeing none, Councillor Santori, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. I'll report out on today's GOC. We had several items on the agenda. The first one being a comprehensive report from Tricia Davison on Parks and Recreation. A lot of the focus has been on COVID and the protocols that the city is undertaking in response to guidelines from both the Ministry of Health as well as Interior Health. The good news, if I can call it that, is that several of the programs that were non-existent back in 2020 are now coming back into place. Many of the programs at the Aquatic and Fitness Center are active again. We are slowly starting to replenish the staff that we had lost and the inability to train during COVID. So those are all positive signs. We are able to host larger events like the Smoke Eaters hockey, minor hockey and tournaments, subject to, of course, protocols and vaccine cards and masks. And while that might be somewhat of an inconvenience for many, I think the majority of people appreciate the fact that our staff has worked hard to make this possible and to see the reopening of our programs, not back to pre-COVID days, but significantly better than they were a year ago. Moving on, also next is the Butler Park lighting, which will proceed this fall with the lights and in next year with the netting. And today the City Council approved the redirection of funds that were from Columbia Basin Trust, who have agreed to move the funds from the Groudage Avenue project to the Butler Park lighting in the amount of $238,000, which will reduce the overall cost of that project by some 14%. As discussed earlier, the Groudage Avenue project has not been shelved. A significant amount of work has been put into that project. And the expectation is that we will proceed with that project at a later date. We also received a request from the Trail Curling Club to retain their lease costs at 2020 levels. The Trail Curling Club, like many other societies and nonprofits, et cetera, have had to operate under a considerable amount of uncertainty with respect to COVID. Obviously, the Trail Curling Club, like many others, the question of sustainability moving forward is in question because of the uncertainty around COVID. So on that note, council has agreed to keep the lease costs at 2020 levels. And we certainly wish the Trail Curling Club all the best in terms of attracting not only new curlers, but existing curlers who, because of COVID, did not participate last year. And hopefully with the protocols in place and ensuring a safe sport environment that they can get those people back, as well as new curlers. Parks and Rec also in Under Trail Memorial Center, the old library space, the HVAC system has totally packed it in, and there were two that went out for tender, and 2 bids were submitted. The lowest bid has gone to West Kootenai Mechanical of Trail at a total cost of $135,620, and that was approved by council. Council was also notified today that we were successful in obtaining a grant of $43,000 towards the Active Transportation Network Plan at a total cost of $87,000. Now, the Active Transportation Network Plan that the city must have is a prerequisite for the city to apply for federal transportation grants moving forward. So the $43,000 grant was welcomed, and council did approve the balance at today's meeting. Council today approved the purchase of a mini excavator for the cemetery. That went out to tender. There were 8 bids, and the successful bidder was Trowlex Rentals out of Castlegar at a total cost of $102,331, which came within the capital budget for equipment replacement, which was originally set at $125,000. Next was the off-leash park. Staff did a fairly comprehensive public survey online, gaining input from the general public on preferred locations. There were 4 different locations that stood out. Others that were suggested were very, very low and were not included in the report. But the 4 that were that received a significant amount of votes or yays were Gyro Park, Centennial Park, McBride Street, and Bear Creek Park. Council's decision at this time, before we proceed to design of the off-leash park, is that staff revisit the top 3 locations, being Gyro, Centennial, and McBride, and to present that back to council with rationale as to which one they are recommending over the others. And that furthermore, once that has been determined, that we take that to the public or to the area which is being recommended to gain residents' input. We don't want to spend a significant amount of time and financial resources in a location which may not be agreeable to residents, given the fact that they may come up with some reasons as to why it should not be located. And I think council needs to hear that. Next is the HVAC system at the RCMP building. 2 bids were received, and that work will proceed on council's approval and will be awarded to Venture Mechanical at the amount of $146,957 plus applicable taxes and fees. The Extended Hour Child Care Center, which is to be located at the the Extended Hours Child Care Center to be located in Tadnak, which is currently in the planning process, has awarded Bocking Associates to run the business and operational development of the Extended Hours Child Care Center at a cost of $89,000. Council did decide to direct award this to Bocking Associates, given the fact of their involvement and knowledge of the project from the onset, and it was felt to be in the city's best interest that we move forward with that knowledge and award them the business and operational development contract. Lastly was a grant request from Generation to Generation. Their request was for a property tax exemption. Council's decision is rather than to proceed with a tax exemption, that a cash grant of $6,000 be provided, which will more than cover their the projected taxes on that property, and will leave them some other money to put in other areas. So that was approved at $6,000. And I believe that concludes everything under the GOC, and it does conclude my report. And I just want to make a comment and to congratulate the Smoke Eaters for hosting the Canadian national team and here in Trail on Monday, October the 4th. I think the 1,250 people that are going to it will truly enjoy it, and will be able to enjoy the talent that these women athletes have in the sport of hockey. And kudos to the Trail Smoke Eaters for going after it and bringing the world champions here to Trail, where we are not new to having world champions. So congratulations to the Smoke Eaters, and looking forward to greeting the Canadian national team when they get here. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Santori. Any questions for Councillor Santori? Seeing none, Councillor Jones, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Payson. Just to start with, on September 8th, I attended the Supportive Housing Committee Zoom meeting, which was also attended by BC Housing. It was a very productive meeting. We got a lot of things put in motion so that we could, start talking about this homeless situation in a more, a more positive outlook, rather than, the negative concept that we continue to get. I just want people to understand that council is working on the supportive housing and the vulnerable community. We are constantly searching and reaching for support and reaching out to different community organizations for help and support with this situation that has come before us with that vulnerable community. I also wanted to mention that the UBCM conference was done virtually this year. I did have an opportunity to only attend 2 of the conference calls with different ministers. And the one that I attended was a conference call with Sheila Malcolm, Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. And also, I should mention that along with Mayor Payson and some of the other council members, we did have a really good discussion with them about the mental health and addiction situation in our community. And, they've heard it before. They understand what we're talking about. They have heard it from every community in our province, and they, as well as we are looking for a resolution to this situation. We also had a conference call with Minister Dave Eby, the Attorney General and Minister responsible for housing. And I just want to say that I felt that Mayor Payson did a wonderful job of stating our situation to the minister, telling them exactly what we've done in our community, how we have tried to assist these people, and by requesting help for our situation. I just wanted to say that I thought it was very well presented, and at the end of it, they were listening and they were understanding what our situation was, and they felt that we have been doing a great job with the, bringing the community task force to, to the community, and how that was working. it was almost like they knew about it previously and wanted to, they basically said, keep up the good work. They are supporting us in any way that they can. They mentioned that in the budget, that was just passed, that $500 million was and has been put towards mental health and support. So I think it's important that people know that we are talking about it. We see what's happening in our community. We are constantly bringing it forward to the people that can make a difference. And, you know, we have to continue doing that. I also attended there was the first Bondsville for the curling club in Trail since COVID. And I just want to congratulate them as well on, you know, for putting such a great Bondsville forward. Very COVID awareness. Everybody looked like they were having a great time. And we're just really excited to be out and curling again. And it was actually great to see. And that is my report. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Jones. Any questions from Councillor Jones or for Councillor Jones? Seeing none. Okay, and I just want to thank you for acknowledgement of my presentation to at the UBCM meeting. So thank you for that. Councillor Butler, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just on behalf of council, I attended the monthly LCC TDS meeting this past month, along with the virtual MIABC AGM meeting during the prior to the week of the virtual UBCM. And as Councillor Jones just mentioned, I also attended several of the ministerial conference calls at this year's virtual UBCM. And I would also like to echo Councillor Jones's comments regarding Mayor Paisen's presentation and preparedness on those calls. I think they're extremely important meetings, and the fact that Trail presents so well, I think, is definitely an asset, or it definitely is definitely recognized at that level of government. So again, I just wanted to echo those comments and say thank you for your leadership when it comes to these meetings that we have with the different ministers. So thank you. That's all of my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. And I mean, I will say that I had very good mentors in how we handle the UBCM meetings with CAO Per Hudoff and Mayor Mike Martin. So learn from the best and take that and add your own style into it. And I also want to thank staff as well for preparing the documents needed for all of council to support the meetings. And I do agree that we have typically heard, it's been, I guess, 7 years now I've been at UBCMs, and the City of Trails organization going into the meeting does not go unnoticed. So thank you for that. Councillor Dobie, you are next.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paisen. I too, along with a few of the other councillors, attended the meetings with UBCM. I attended all 4 with the municipal ministers. And yes, I want to support what they had said in terms of your presentation, but also the fact that this year, the councillors were given a chance near the end. There was a few minutes left over. It's very hard sometimes to sit and not be able to say a word, especially for a female. And so I appreciated that we had that extra few minutes and we were allowed to input something. So thank you for that. On October 9th and October 23rd will be the 2 last market days. And at the last market, we had 40 plus vendors, and we're expecting to move ahead with that on the final 2 market days. On those 2 market days as well, we will have tulip and daffodil bulbs on sale by Communities in Bloom. So anybody looking for bulbs, be there at one of those markets and support Communities in Bloom. On September 23rd, I had a meeting with Ron Parapolka, and he had contacted me and wanted us to get together on discussions on options on the Columbia River and regards other tourism issues. So we met for about an hour and a half, and I understand that Mr. Parapokan on behalf of Community Futures, and also Mr. Doug Jones and Erica Cresp from the Chamber of Commerce will probably be making presentations at one of our upcoming meetings regarding some of the tourism issues. The Community Futures also announced, and I'm not sure if this went out to all of council and staff, that they have hired another self-employment program coordinator. This is a temporary position, and it's a 48-week program. So this is to, again, help with young people that are trying to get in the business, assist them with locations and funding and all the bells and whistles and T's and I's that they have to dot and cross. So that concludes my report, Mayor Payson. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Councillor Dobie? Okay, none. Okay, go on to mine. I'll abridge this a little bit. So UBCM meetings, thanks to everyone on council who attended. Yeah, it's definitely challenging to have teleconferences and not be able to sit face to face with people, but I'll just summarize quickly the meetings. So Ministry of Advanced Education, which is Minister Ann Kang, where we requested funding to advance Selkirk College in areas of enhanced programming, student housing, and structural improvements. Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth discussed how the city can best lobby and assist to improve federal support for RCMP, including increasing recruitment efforts, increasing training and support, changing the structure of sick leave so that those affected can effectively return back to work instead of being on extended leaves. And we need to increase our current local allotment of RCMP membership so we can actually have the 14 boots on the ground that we are paying for annually. It's really important for us. Met with the West Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital District meeting. We met with Ministry of Health staff. Minister Dix was unable to attend. So we spoke to the health ministry on supporting IH identified capital projects, the importance of aligning the hospital district with capital projects for IH. There was many years where the disalignment did not help our area get any funding. Transportation network enhancing in the Kootenay Boundary to get patients to appointments, and also increasing funding for primary care networks. So we really tried to strike a balance of supporting what Interior Health sees as the capital projects, but also bringing in a rural focus and flair with the transportation networks and the primary care networks, because having primary care networks and effective, efficient transportation in our communities and in our vast geographic area is really important. We met with the Attorney General and Minister of Housing, David Eby, and the Mental Health and Addictions Minister, Sheila Malcolmson. That has already been discussed and discussed earlier in our meeting. And, you know, as a medium-sized municipality, I think we have a lot of the same struggles as everyone else, but it's probably a little bit easier for us to be left behind and be forgotten. And I think coming forward as a community through lobbying, through our work as a council, to make sure that we are not forgotten and our concerns are taken seriously is very important. And I thank council for their careful deliberation of tonight's issues surrounding homelessness. It's a very difficult issue for us to manage and try to implement change on, but we're trying. Along with that, Councillor Butler and we had a request to meet with Tara Howes, the Green Party candidate before the federal election. We did meet with her, and I just want to congratulate and thank all those who put their names forward for an election position, and congratulate Richard Cannings for his re-election. And we look forward to working with MP Cannings on local solutions to local issues. When we are talking about the vulnerable population again, I attended probably too many meetings this month over the past 5 weeks, multiple meetings, too many to count. And they're all centered on engaging and assisting and having coordinated efforts and supporting each other as the ministries and the organizations come together to try to manage the homeless. So the meetings continue with Interior Health, with the RCMP, with the RDKB, with the Fire Department, with BC Housing, with Emergency Management Services, and I'm sure I am missing some of them. And really just everyone is communicating very well and trying to come up with local solutions for our problems to make sure that our vulnerable population, whether they are COVID positive or not COVID positive, are supported. A couple strategies that came forward from a meeting with the RCMP is pallet disposal. That was talked about in the paper. There was a small article on that. So making sure that businesses are disposing of their pellets and their cardboard and larger pieces of, I can say maybe trash or garbage behind their buildings. All those things are generally taken away, and there's temporary housing units built out of those, and it creates a problem for bylaw and for other organizations that are trying to manage the homeless. So having pellet disposal and garbage disposal by the businesses was seen to be helpful. We also talked about a cart strategy. So having the carts returned to stores and potentially having trying to get a grant to have carts that are identified for a certain homeless person. So the concept is creating ownership. So rather than having multiple carts streamed together or having a cart and leaving it somewhere and moving on to another one, if carts are purchased and allocated to people, and that kind of becomes their vehicle of transport, and hopefully keep their belongings to that cart and not have it expand, then that was one strategy that was lofted. It's going to be looked into. And there's also, the grocery stores around town are losing a lot of money with the carts that are disappearing, and they're over $1,000 each. And so it's, we need to start keeping a better track of those carts so they're not just being left all over our municipality. And we talked about the CDS expansion of the shelter today. So that is kind of the multiple meetings on the vulnerable population. UBCM, Terra House, Trail Health and Environment Committee. So we had a meeting last week. It was our first meeting where we reconvened after summer. Land remediation, soil remediation is going well. Garden remediation is going well. We had a presentation on fugitive dust. We had materials from the air quality working group on air quality that are put forward. They are almost ready for public presentation. We've engaged a plain language group, and they edit all the documents that are put forward to make sure that the language is not as technical as sometimes it comes out of the meetings. And it really brings the material down to a community level. We thought we had reached that level where we had 4 documents ready to be released, and there was some feedback from the plain language group that they were potentially a little bit not clear or too technical in some spots. So they are now going back to the air quality working group for another edit. Family Health reported that the blood lead clinics are underway. And in November, we have the reporting of the blood lead level, of children's blood lead level, which happens annually, which is it's a big deal for us. It's something that we really look forward to every year, to see those declining levels. The Home and Garden program talked about soil testing and remediation. Soil testing can continue to happen until it's too frosty and the soil is too hard. So I encourage all homeowners to get their soil tested and to sign up. You can do that at www.thap.ca. And I just want to thank the program teams who have worked so diligently over the summer during COVID with our terrible forest fire weather and the smoke that they've had to work outside in, to continue to do soil sampling, land remediation, yard remediation. And so really thank you very much for your work and the work that you will continue to do before the inclement winter weather starts. And to sum up, just with respect to vaccinations, so we are doing quite well in the City of Trail. But I really encourage all of those over 12 to get vaccinated. The last meeting I had that I attended with Interior Health indicated that a vaccination rate of 90% of those eligible is going to be needed to reach herd immunity due to the Delta variant. So originally it was about 80%. It's now at 90%. So please encourage all those who are eligible to get vaccinated. I want to thank all city staff for their tireless efforts during the pandemic as you work to implement restrictions and orders as directed by the provincial health officer. As we heard today with Tricia Davidson, it's no small feat what her team continues to do to keep our community safe. I want to thank all our citizens for your kindness and your patience shown to all employees across every sector in our city, region, and province. Everyone has a job to do. They have rules to follow, and we all now need to comply with COVID-19 protocols to keep us all safe. So thank you to everyone for doing your best to help us do our collective best as a community as we fight COVID-19 together. So that is all from my reports. And I know I talk kind of fast, but it's been a bit of a long night. So I'm happy to field any questions that anyone may have. No questions? Okay, we'll continue on with the meeting then. There are 8 items on the consent agenda. The recommendation is that the items on the consent agenda be received for information. Does someone... was that you, Councillor Kashoni, and
Yes,
someone to
sorry, yeah.
second that?
I will.
Councillor Butler, thank you very much. I would like to pull out item 5.5, but we'll go for a vote first. All in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Councillor Doby, do you want to pull something out as well? And you're on mute.
Okay, yes, 5.1, please. Report on invoices paid.
Okay, so maybe we'll take that one first.
Okay, if I can refer this, please, to Ms. McIsaac. Page 43 of 64. I noticed, and I'm sure that we voted on this earlier, that we went with a new janitorial service this year. So there's 2 payments in on that page, both for the same amount, $44.62.50. But I also noticed a payment to Milo's janitorial service of $1491.72. Is that just catching up on a late payment to them from the last contract, or what?
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Doby. I don't have any of the details for those financial transactions, but I can seek information from our accounting department and share it with council tomorrow.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. That concludes me, Mayor Payson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to pull out 5.5, and why I would like to pull it out it's the paramedics, and I would like to write them an email of clarification. So we received a letter on September 3rd before the UBCM from the Ambulance and Paramedics Association, and then there was an article in the paper on September 21st, which talks about enhancements, new paramedic positions announced, and there was nothing announced for our area. And then September 22nd, we received another letter indicating to reach out if we had any questions and talking about the ambulance and paramedics. So I would just like to reach out to get some clarification on, do they feel that ambulance service in our area is adequate and there are little to no delays? Because I'm just wondering why we and the Kootenay Boundary were left out of any advancements from the paramedics positions and funding from what I can see from the article in the paper. So I'm happy to just write a email to try to sort that out or get staff to write a letter. But I just thought when I saw the couple letters, saw the article in the paper, I just thought it was a little bit of a disparity that we weren't listed in the funding at all. And to me, that's just curious. So I'd like to advance that. Councillor Doby, go ahead.
Yes, I support what you're saying, Mayor Payson, but I just wondered when they point out the 6, I guess, training recommendations, I'd like to know if our local paramedics have been all trained in these.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay, great, thank you. So Ms. McIsaac, we voted on receipt of all the items.
You did, yes.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, any new business from the floor?
Yeah,
Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, go ahead.
I would just like to make a comment, and this is not something new. This is something old. On my travels up Rawson Avenue last week, I see our hotel has painted their building. It's beautiful. It looks just super duper. And going up the gulch, I can't understand why we cannot do something with some of these buildings that are looking worse now than they've ever looked before. And I am wondering if we should be upgrading our bylaw or doing something, because it's getting worse. And to add to that, the old Eaton's building in Downtown Trail is another building that, in my opinion, needs to be, something has to be done. I mean, they've got junk in there. The windows, they're so filthy dirty that you can't even see what's inside, which is nothing. The nicest part of the whole building is the new awning. And I'm just at a wit's end here, and people have been asking me about this several times. But Michelle, is the bylaw, can we upgrade the bylaw, or is there anything we can do? I know our hands are tied with certain things, but is there anything we can do?
With respect to concerns around the condition of properties, certainly there is within the unsightly premises bylaw the mechanism by which you could require some improvements from the private property owners. And the caution that I have raised for you in years prior, where these large buildings requiring some rather significant facade improvements would be required, is that the property owners aren't generally earning revenue from those properties, so they are being left in a state of disrepair. Should council issue an order for remedial action, so requiring them to paint or to fix the siding, and then be positioned to do that work at the property owner's expense, comes at the risk that those improvements can't be afforded by the property owner, or they would be undertaking them on their own voluntarily. And so with that, if we were to attach a large improvement bill to their property taxes, the city could, through tax sale, if they aren't able to pay that, become the owner of these derelict properties. And that's a burden then on the municipality. So we do need to be cautious in the absence of any grant funding that these owners could perhaps utilize. So earlier it was mentioned that Community Futures and the Chamber of Commerce will be making a presentation to council. So we do have them scheduled as a delegation. And one item that I understand they'll be speaking to council about is the downtown improvement area, or the downtown business improvement area, which might include the Gulch, and perhaps a revitalization program. They're modeled on a granting program that's been successful in another municipality. So with that said, yes, you likely do have the teeth in your bylaw, but you would just want to be cognizant of the impact on the property owner if you were to advance an order requiring upkeep of their property that they may not be able to afford at this time.
Okay,
Thank
you. Any other new business? Seeing none. Okay, number 7, department reports. There's a bylaw enforcement department report of August 2021, and the recommendation is that this report be received for information. Do I have someone to make that motion? Councillor Jones and Councillor Butler. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.